in the 2020 report. But this does not mean that all hope is lost, that we should just give up. We should take this on as a challenge to continue our fight towards gender equality for the future generations. Next slide. The Philippines in particular currently ranks at 19 in the 2022 Gender Gap Index with 0.783 in a scale of 0 to 1, wherein 1 represents optimal gender parity. This is a slight drop from our score of 0.784 in 2021 when we ranked at 17th place. Despite this, I would like to highlight that the Philippines still came in second among countries in the East Asia and the Pacific region, and is still leading among our Asian counterparts as the only one in the top 20. Next. To be specific, the Global Gender Gap Index measures 4 areas: economic participation and opportunity, educational attainment, health and survival, and political empowerment. From 2009 until 2022, the Philippines has closed the gap in the area of economic participation and opportunity, probably because of SM, by 0.034 points at 0.794. We also maintained the smallest gap in educational attainment at 0.997. Unfortunately, after scoring 1 for consecutive years, we slowly started to decline starting in 2020. The area of health and survival closely follows educational attainment for our country at 0.979, a score that we have maintained since 2017 after dropping from 0.980 in the previous years. Meanwhile, political empowerment is the area wherein the Philippines has the widest gap in equality, consistently being at more than 60%. Next. Going into detail, our small gap in educational attainment is affirmed by the latest figures from the Department of Education and the Commission on Higher Education. As reflected in the 2022 fact sheet on women and men, girls have a slightly higher net enrollment rate and completion rate than boys from grades 1 to 12. This is maintained in the tertiary level, wherein a slight increase in the percentage of women enrollees from 2019 to 2022 can be observed according to CHED's report. Next slide. Meanwhile, our wide gap in political participation can easily be observed in our recent 2022 national elections, wherein only 1 out of 10 presidential candidates, 1 out of 9 vice presidential candidates, and 12 out of 64 senatorial candidates were female. This is even further observed from our historical record, wherein from the first until the current 19th Congress, women senators have not made up more than 7 or 29% of the 24 seats. Next. On economic participation and opportunity, the latest Women in Business report in 2022 shows that the Philippines has dropped from our top spot in the ranking of female leaders in senior management roles, although we still rank 3rd among countries with the highest number of women leaders in mid-sized firms. Next. However, overall labor force participation remains low for women based on the most recent labor force survey in 2020 at only 34.5% in comparison to men's 54.8%. Next. Contributory to this may be the societal expectations for women to perform unpaid care and domestic work. In the 2021 National Household Care Survey, results showed that women respondents dominated the time spent in all care activities in general. Results showed that in the midst of the pandemic, the time women spent on care work increased to up to 13 hours a day compared to the 2017 NHCS record of 12 hours and only 8 hours for men in comparison to the 5 hours a day record in 2017. Next. Zooming in briefly on our to 24 age group, showed that there is a higher percentage distribution of female youth that are in live-in setups and those that have been formally married. Next slide. Meanwhile, the initial results of the 2022 NDHS show that among girls aged 15 to 19, 5.4% have been pregnant and 1.6% were pregnant at the time of the survey. Preliminary findings of the YAPS-5 show that 4 in 10 female youth have experienced at least one challenge in accessing pre- and postnatal care. Next. Preliminary findings also of YAPS-5 showed that there is a higher percentage of female youth that have thought of suicide at 24% than their male counterparts at 10%. Female youth also constituted a higher percentage of those that have attempted suicide at 11% in comparison to their male peers at 4%. Next. Moving over to violence against women, the initial results of the 2022 NDHS showed that 17.5% of women aged 15 to 49 have experienced some form of physical, sexual, or emotional violence by their current or most recent husband or intimate partner, with emotional violence being the highest reported form of violence against women at 15.2%. Next. Narrowing down to this year's National Women's Month theme, which calls attention to the need for equality and inclusivity in the field of technology, innovation, and ICT, I would like to refer to two major issues in the field of STI and ICT that can be found in the updated GWIP Plan 2019 to 2025. First is that women are not sufficiently benefiting from the advances of STI and ICT, and second is that there is limited participation of women in higher level technical and leadership positions in these sectors. Next slide. In recent years, we have seen a slight increase in higher education, enduring stereotypes that drive women out of STEM education or STEM industries. In particular, in a 2019 baseline study entitled Women in STEM by the Philippine Business Coalition of Women Empowerment, or PBCWE, together with Unilab Foundation and UP Center for Women's Study Foundation, respondents mentioned that the following constraints or issues that they face in the industry. First, as men interact among themselves, male dominance in both numbers and leadership also lead to men in management promoting and giving men more attention in the organization. But I think that is not the case for SM. Gender stereotyping also leads to women being assigned to administrative or managerial positions while men stay on the technical side of things. Third, often domestic care responsibilities hinder career mobility as promotion requires relocation or extension of work hours. And lastly, workplace harassment and discrimination is also present. 11.11% of the respondents reported that they have experienced sexual harassment in the workplace but did not report to anyone in the company, while 8% experienced discrimination in the workplace and did not report as well. Next slide. Furthermore, in the Philippine Institute of Development Studies, or PIDS, discussion paper in 2022 entitled Digital for Her, Future Casting Platform Work for Women in Rural Philippines, they found that despite men and women having seemingly the same opportunities online, cultural barriers lead women to low complexity and, in turn, lower wage jobs. Misconceptions such as respondent claiming that women are better suited to less complex digital work such as encoding, and more complex jobs like digital designing are more suited for men are still prevalent. Next, the recently released results of Women and ICT Development Index, or WIDI, also reflected the general use of women of the internet and devices to seek information and entertainment, next slide, for education, for employment, and for communication. Next. In the same report, it was found that 62.7% of the respondents have experienced cybercrime incidents such as text scams, hacking, and phishing. Next slide. To end my presentation, I would like to reiterate that while we have made valiant efforts and strides towards gender equality and women's empowerment, there's still a lot that needs to be done. And as society continues to move forward and technology and innovation continues to progress, we must ensure that innovation and technology are maximized for gender equality, that we do not leave women behind, and that we ensure women and girls are safe and secure in these spaces. Next slide. So thank you and happy Women's Day to everyone.
Thank you very much, Ms. Balmes. Indeed, we do have gains, but as mentioned, there are still challenges and issues that we will continue to address and face. That is why we have a full day of discussion and exchanges today. Muli marami pong salamat, Ms. Balmes, sa pagbahagi ng tunay na estado ni Juana. Now, the PCW is the key agency mandated to create an enabling environment for government and other stakeholders to be more responsive in achieving gender equality and the empowerment of all women and girls. They do this through policy making and influencing key actions towards empowering women and girls. PCW, together with the United Nations and UN Women, spearheaded this whole day event. And now, to give her special remarks and introduce our keynote speaker as well, please welcome PCW Executive Director, Atty. Christine Rosary Yuson Chavez.
To Vice President, Honorable Sara Z. Duterte, UN Resident Coordinator Gustavo Gonzalez, Ms. Rosaline Messina of UN Women, Mr. Stephen Tan of SM Supermalls, ambassadors, ministers, and representatives of the various government agencies, my fellow government officers and servants, all the distinguished guests, speakers, and participants here from the different government agencies, everyone, maayong buntag, and happy International Women's Day. It feels surreal and exhilarating to have all of you here today because it has been 4 years since we last celebrated our National Women's Month face-to-face. Therefore, we deeply value your attendance and presence here today. We have gathered here for a great cause. We want to break the code. And that takes 3 levels of meaning for us today. First, we must break the code for women in the ICT. In relation to our advocacy, the code can be compared to the systems, the programs, and initiatives that will enable us to advance the representation of value of women in ICT. Through the discussions today, we aim to decipher the meaning behind the code, unravel the digital gender gap, address the issue of women's underrepresentation in this industry, and identify ways to leverage ICT to promote the well-being of women and girls. Second, we should break the code on society's stereotypes of women. Our culture is laden with deeply ingrained biases about the types of jobs women can undertake, how they should dress, how they should speak, why they ought to get married and have children, and the traits they should exhibit, such as being meek, caring, and inferior. Therefore, we must demonstrate that women transcend these stereotypes. Let us break the barriers and show them who we are, what we are capable of, the rights we are entitled to, and what we can do for the community and the country. Third, let's focus on breaking the code to achieve gender equality. This has been very challenging. This has been a very challenging code to crack for many years. But there is hope for a better and more equal future for the next generations. Our official hashtag, "We Can Be Equal," embodies this hope. We can break the code to gender equality by identifying and addressing the gender gaps and root causes of inequality, as well as solving the factors that hinder our progress. To sum up, let us break the code for women in ICT, break the code on society stereotypes of women and break the code towards gender equality. Every National Women's Month celebration is a call to action. We urge the private partner Viviamo for collaborating with us in this event. Rights, no matter the gender, class, status, and ability. A society that overrides differences, a society where no one is left behind. Lastly, to all women and girls, this celebration is all about you. This month and beyond, revel in your strength, your magnificence, your brilliance, your resilience, and your power. Remember, you can be pioneers, leaders, change makers, and movers. In every family, every community, every island of the nation, you can make a difference and you can be an inspiration. Let us take this celebration today to show that empowering women can empower the nation. The pursuit for gender equality is not just a women's issue, but a human rights issue that affects everyone. When individuals are treated equally, they can reach their full potential, and the society as a whole can benefit from the contributions of all its members. Women and everyone, we must continue working for gender equality and an inclusive society. Now, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, may I present to you our keynote speaker for this morning, the Vice President of the Philippines and the Secretary of Education, the Honorable Sara Z. Duterte.
Thank you. Please take your seats. Ladies and gentlemen, assalamualaikum. Madayaw ug maayong adlaw kaninyong tanan. Good day to everyone. I am truly humbled and honored to be in the presence of Filipinas who are making an incredible impact in the lives of our fellow Filipinas, especially those who have less in life and those who are feeling lost in their battle against discrimination, in their fight for equal rights and opportunities, or in their struggle and suffering from sexual and other forms of abuses committed against them, against women and young girls. I just have something to share with you, a recent experience about being a woman leader, a woman in a high-ranking position. But I have to tell you that I never saw myself by my gender. I never presented myself ever when I campaign, when I go out and talk to people and say, piliin ninyo ako because I am a woman, I can do this, I can do that. I never saw myself by my gender. I always see myself as a person, individual, in my unique qualities. In fact, there was an FGD that was conducted for me, and it revealed there that people do not vote for me because I am a woman. And more men vote for me than women. Yes, surprisingly. There was an FGD that was made for me before I ran for vice president. And I took they did their presentations, and then we listened, and then there were comments coming from the commander-in-chief on how to do their work. And then, nung umuwi na kami, sabi nung colleague ko sa Office of the Vice President, hindi mo ba napansin na ikaw lang ang babae doon? And then I said, no, hindi ko na, ako nga, and then I said, oh nga no, I was the only female, high-ranking official in the commander's table. And when you scan both sides of the room, the left side, the Philippine National Police, all the senior officers were men. And the right side, when you scan the Armed Forces of the Philippines, all the senior officers were men. And then I realized, nang sinabi sa akin na ikaw lang yung isang babae doon, naisip ko, And I'm not saying this kasi binobola ko ang mga babae ha. But then I realized, sabi ko, according to the words of ma'am, it would have made a difference if more women were there as senior officers. And then their output, their ways forward, I think would have been better if more senior officers were women. So, sa atin na lang yun. Dahil it was just an observation. And after the fact, actually, nung pinoint out na sa akin na ikaw lang yung nag-iisang babae doon. And then sabi ko, nga, no? And then I think mas magaling siguro yung nila. Actually, that was one thing that was lacking in all their recommendations for action and their ways forward. There was nothing about innovating and innovation. And so before I share my thoughts about this gathering's theme, let me say that the work that you do truly inspire many of us to continue our initiatives to serve, help, and assist other women to become empowered, to become free, and become women who are giving other women the strength, the support, and the reason to pursue a better life for themselves and their loved ones. Kahanga-hanga po ang inyong ginagawa para sa mga kababaihan at hindi po matatawaran ang epekto ng inyong ginagawa sa mga komunidad. Gaya po ninyo, naniniwala rin ako na kapag ang mga kababaihan sa isang komunidad ay nabigyan ng pagkakataon maging produktibo, kapag sila ay nabigyan ng edukasyon at nagkaroon ng kapangyarihan ng kaalaman, at kapag sila ay nahasa na mamumuno, kaya po nilang baguhin ang mukha ng kanilang komunidad. Let me cite an example in the far-flung community in Davao City called Paquibato District. I'm sure you've heard of this. This is the stronghold of the New People's Army in Davao City for the longest time, since the 1980s, the 1990s, the 2000s, until 2016, when I came back as City Mayor of Davao City. It has always been impenetrable. It's a community of lumads that gradually deteriorated while it was under the influence of the New People's Army. Most children of Paquibato were uneducated and malnourished growing up, but they had always been prepared to join the underground movement even when they were barely in their teens. Their fathers, if not farmers, could also be the members of the armed group. Mostly, the women, their mothers, were the workers, while the men were lurking around, ready for a gun battle in case government forces arrived. For generations, the lumads of Paquibato lived in a cycle of violence that robbed them of their right to live peacefully. It was a cycle of violence that also stripped them of their opportunities, education for children, literacy for women, livelihood, and employment for the men. While it is a far-flung barangay, a village, and like most areas in Mindanao, Paquibato's land is fertile. But because it was controlled by the armed groups, there was no development. The roads were craggy, there were no bridges, no schools, no health centers, no government presence, just a people isolated from the rest of the world. But we cannot allow such an injustice to happen to Paquibato forever. Something happened during my early months when I came back as mayor in Davao City, and that changed my perspective on what to do in Paquibato. That story is better said in another forum, but something happened, and then I said, nakakahiya naman sa mga Davaoenyo kung magiging mayor ako, and Paquibato will be Paquibato in the 1980s, and lahat kami dito sa baba, we are in the 2016. The year 2016. But sila doon, nandoon pa sila sa 1983, 1984, 1987. Sabi ko, nakakahiya sa kanila at sa mga Davaoenyo. And hindi ko gusto na matapos yung term ko as mayor, and then they will say na, oh look, ano ba sa amin ang pagiging mayor mo? Wala namang nagbago sa buhay namin dito. So, I thought I had to make decisive actions in the hope of finding solutions to the root cause of the problems hounding the community for decades. And then, we did an innovation. We introduced Peace 911, a government-initiated but civilian-led peace initiative that required people to help us help themselves. One of the components of the program was to teach Lumad women to grow and produce organic vegetables properly. It was something new to them. It required them to become organized. It demanded their time, and it also backyard farmers were taught basic financial literacy. And part of the program was to establish a market for their assist the empowerment of women in Pakiba Free City. But for another forum, I will just have to say na dahil nadaanan namin yon, tinapos namin ang decades-long problem in Pakibato City in 4 years. I think sustaining the peace in that area is more difficult than gaining the peace. What we did in 4 years. Dahil ngayon, pag nag-iisip ako sa Pakibato, naiisip ko, siguro with a snap of fingers, baka merong mangyari, pabalik lahat ng problema. It's really very fragile doon. At the forefront of our fight were the women of Pakibato who allowed us to help them. And we owe it to them. Apparently, they were tired, exasperated, and fed up with the so-called protracted war waged beguilingly in the name of the indigenous peoples. Those women, unlike all of us here, may not have access to advanced technology and innovations. They may not fully understand things about the internet, or Facebook, or Twitter, or how their transistor radio works. But those women, they embraced a version of technology and innovation that was applicable and effective to change their lives and their community. Surely, there are other and many other Pakibatos in the entire country, communities that need technological interventions to address existing structures of violence, including the lack of basic education infrastructures for children and their mothers. Naaalala ko yung kwento nung I grew up in Mindanao, and naaalala ko yung mga kwento sa giyera sa Maguindanao. Usually natitigil ang klase kapag merong firefight between government forces and the rebels. And pag wala na, babalik na yung mga bata. And sometimes they stay in tents that are tattered with bullets kasi hindi na useful ang kanilang mga classrooms dahil nga puno na rin o nasira na rin ng mga bala at bomba. And makikita nung mga educators na hindi lang ang mga bata ang bumabalik at umuupo doon sa mga tent, umuupo sa ilalim ng puno para makinig sa guro. Sumasama din ang kanilang mga nanay dahil they were deprived of the opportunity to learn. And ang maganda doon, gusto nilang matuto kasama ang kanilang mga anak. Today, it is important for us to advocate for an inclusive digital education that will provide opportunities for women and girls to overcome any inequality affecting their development and involvement in the community. I am glad that we have started implementing programs such as the Innovations for Women Enterprises or iWomen project, which provides technical assistance to women micro-entrepreneurs. We also have the Women Helping Women Innovating Social Enterprises that helps prepare women-led social enterprises for growth, scalability, and subsequent venture capital funding. This year, and after this event, I will proceed to Laguna because the Office of the Vice President will implement the Magnegosyo Taday program nationwide. This is one of the, I would say, best practices during my administration as mayor. It is an entrepreneurship program for women, and then we expanded it to LGBTQI members and other underprivileged sectors. It is my earnest desire that the nationwide rollout will help stimulate entrepreneurial activities, create employment, and contribute to our post-pandemic recovery. Meanwhile, as we narrow the gender gap to digital accessibility, let us not forget to strengthen our protection mechanisms for Filipinas, including girls, from all kinds of violence committed against them at home, in their workplaces, and in online communities. Ending domestic violence may be insurmountable, but not impossible. The Department of Education is committed to protecting the rights of children in basic education. We have strengthened our child protection mechanism and launched the Learner Telesafe Contact Center National Hotline, where our learners can report cases of abuse, including online child sexual exploitation. On this note, allow me to acknowledge the support of our civil society partners who steadfastly provide psychosocial and legal support for victims of child abuse and human trafficking, an abhorrent practice that continues to violate our people's basic human rights and dignity. DepEd is also making sure that teenage mothers who have dropped out of formal school to take care of their children are provided with a second chance to finish basic education and pursue their dreams through the alternative learning system or pursue technical skills training through our TESDA programs. Alam nyo, very recently I visited Pikit National High School in Cotabato, North Cotabato. Yes. And pumunta ako doon dahil nawala ang aming mga learners. When I saw the data, only 63% are coming to school. And so I had to go, and then I read the interviews of the principal. And so I had to go to him and tell him, you know, you're doing it wrong. You do not say that we understand that the children are in fear and do not want to go to school, and then it's okay. That's not how you do it. Told him, you have 63%, you need to be at 100%, so you implement your ADMs or alternative delivery modes, your blended learning program. You say, we understand that you are afraid to come to school, but you need to continue with your modules at home until you are ready to come to school. So I had to explain that to them. And since this is a high school, kinausap ko yung mga estudyante. Kasi tinanong ko for you is abstinence. But, I said, the reality is that you don't practice abstinence. It happens. Whether kagustuhan niyo or hindi, nangyayari siya. Sabi ko, what do you do? Sabi ko dun sa class, what do you do? What do you do when you're sexually active? And they were like, so tumingin na ako sa principal and he was like, so I had to tell them, if you're sexually active, you need to go to a health worker. You need to go to a doctor. Ask that doctor, what should I do? I am sexually active. And then I said, okay, so now you're sexually active, you did not go to the doctor, you got pregnant. What do you do? So nakanganga pa rin. Nakanganga pa rin ang mga bata. And these are 15, 16 years old. And they are the age that are likely to get pregnant. And I said, oh, if you get pregnant, you go back to the doctor and you do your prenatal. And then I said, oh, what do you do? Buntis na kayo, malaki na ang tiyan. So, one was brave enough to answer na, mahunong og eskwela. And ko, no! You don't stop going to school. You go to your principal, you ask your principal, what can you do for me? I am pregnant, but I want to continue on with my studies. So that is just anecdotal, but I think that is the face of our teenagers right now. So, we make sure that they can enroll in ALS, they can enroll in Open University, and they can do ADMs, the Alternative Delivery Modes, which is the blended learning program, which we learned, one of the learnings that we had from the COVID-19 pandemic. The Marcos administration's Philippine Development Plan for 2023 to 2028 is clear in its commitment to increase social protection programs and strengthen the implementation of laws protecting women in low-income households. Let me emphasize that the pursuit of gender equality is not solely a women's issue. Filipino men are encouraged and have been advocating for gender equality too, by voting for me. By helping women access economic opportunities, for example, we empower them to be financially independent, improve the standard of living of their families, and are better able to ensure the good health and education of their children. It is my hope that by working hand in hand with this pursuit, we can provide more digital opportunities to socio-economic growth and gender empowerment, and thereby enable women to rise above any form of online violence affecting their mental and physical well-being. Let us stand together in our common aspirations for inclusive development and remain at the forefront of social transformation for the benefit of women, children, youth, and other vulnerable groups. Today, may we honor Filipino women who tirelessly and selflessly serve their fellow men and country. And in terms of women helping women, I just need to highlight the work of my mother, who is practically raising my children so that I can do more in my work and I can be with you here this morning. But seeing the presentation that there is an issue of unpaid care and domestic work, napaisip ako, kailangan ko babayaran mama ko? Because she really is practically running our house. She takes care of everything. I just come in and out So, pag senior citizen, magkano kaya ang rate? I will start talking to her about her pay tonight. I will just say, Mama, it's International Women's Day, and I learned that unpaid care and domestic work is an issue, and that I think you should receive pay for your work. So, a happy National Women's Day to all of us. Ang lahat ng ating ginagawa ay para sa Diyos, para sa bayan, at sa bawat pamilyang Pilipino. Shukran.
Muli palakpakan po natin Vice President and Deputy Secretary Sara Z. Duterte. Thank you very much for being an inspiration to all the women out there. And now may we request, of course, Vice President Sara Duterte together with our VIPs over here for a white selfie with all the participants in the plenary. So you can either take off your mask and so that you can smile in the selfie. We can see your beautiful smile. All right. Smile to the camera, everybody. Thank you very much. You may now all take your seats, and also to our VIP, we ask you again to go back on your seats, and as well Vice President Sara Duterte, as we call on now the heads of UN agencies, please, to have a photo op with Vice President and our VIPs on stage. Thank you very much to the heads of UN agencies. Next. Can we have the ambassadors and embassy representatives, please, to kindly stand by, please, for a photo op with Vice President Sara Duterte. Thank you very much to the heads of UN agencies. Next up, we have ambassadors and embassy representatives. kindly stand by, please. PCW Mancom. Thank you very much to the ambassadors and embassy representatives. Next, we have PCW Mancom to have a photo op with Vice President Sara Duterte. Can we ask to join next will be Representative Geraldine Roman, Undersecretary Rosemary Edilion, Assistant Secretary Maria Teresa Camba, please. Again, we'd like to call on Assistant Secretary Camba, please, of the ICT to join on stage. Thank you very much. And now can we ask all our VIPs on stage, together with Vice President Sara Duterte, please, to kindly stand up for a photo opportunity. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, let's give a big round of applause to Vice President and Deputy Secretary Sara Duterte. Muli maraming salamat po, and again, happy International Women's Day to all the women in this room and to all the Filipinos out there. Thank you to all our VIPs, and again, we'd like to thank you, Vice President Sara Duterte, for gracing today's occasion, and thank you for being an inspiration to all Filipinas. We are with you in all your initiatives to champion women and girls, especially in the sector of education. Muli maraming salamat po. And now, ladies and gentlemen, to share with us what the different UN agencies has been doing to address existing gender inequalities and boost women participation in different sectors in the Philippines and around the globe, may I ask everybody for your attention for this short video presentation. Let's all watch this.